Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Glenn has held his doctorate in psychology for more than 30 years and is also a former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leave the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Now, before we get started, if you haven't yet downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hey, this is the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston, and I'm here with a kind-hearted woman named Melissa, who has agreed to tell you her story so you can benefit from her strength and success and wisdom and observations, as well as her trials and falls and stumbles and recoveries. Melissa, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. I hope you are.
I am. I really appreciate you doing this.
Absolutely.
So why don't we start at the beginning, not all the way back at the dinosaurs, but the beginning of your relationship with food, and tell us what your struggles were like, what was so bad about it, and what kind of things you tried to get better.
I probably began starting with food in my mid-teenage years, like really struggling with it. Always before that, I was super thin, no problem. Had a very difficult time, I guess, as a teenager. And my mother was binge eating all the time and modeling that in front of me. So that was when the struggle began. And then when I started really gaining weight. And then I reached probably 160 pounds in my college years, which is a lot for me because I'm a tiny 5'4". And it's just been nothing but a cycle, right? This diet, this exercise program, that exercise program, a lot of pain and misery, as I'm sure you're familiar with. I tried the cabbage soup diet, Weight Watchers, Nutrisystem, OA, just every possible thing, right? I was so determined, and I'm really good at following a diet, as most of us are, I think, that are binge eaters for a time. But then when I would fall off the wagon, I was like a drug addict and couldn't get back on and couldn't get back straightened out. And sometimes I would have binges that lasted for over a year. That was my life. Did
you get very heavy?
I did, yeah. 160 pounds for me is really heavy. I weigh about 117 now.
How tall are you?
5'4".
Okay. And did you do things that you were embarrassed about with food? I mean, you don't have to share it if you don't want to.
I did a lot of things I'm embarrassed about, and I would love not to share them, but I think it's important because if there's anybody out there listening that thinks, well, you have worked the system and it works for you, and you just don't know what I've done, and you just don't know how bad it is for me, and I can't possibly make MBA work for me, then I think it's important for you to know the things I've done.
That's why it's important. That's why I share my story also, because one of the pig's greatest strategies is to convince us that we're broken and beyond help, and that nobody else is as sick as we are with food. Nobody knows what we've done. I don't necessarily believe this overall, but when it comes to food addiction, John Bradshaw said, we're sick as our secrets. And I think that does apply to food addiction. So if you're willing, and there's probably nothing you've done that I haven't done, so you're in good company. Tell me what you've done.
Of course, I have taken food out of the trash can. After I've thrown it away, determined not to eat it more times than I would like to remember. I've certainly eaten food off the floor of my kitchen, off the floor of my car. I have multiple times given myself second or third degree burns in my mouth from eating something that was just out of the oven that wasn't cool enough to eat yet.
Oh, you couldn't wait for it to cool?
Nope.
Had to happen. Yeah.
Felt like I was out of control. Now I know no matter what, I am in control. I just have to choose that. I've eaten partially cooked food, raw food, frozen food because I couldn't wait, gross food that I didn't even like. I've eaten off of other people's plates. I've actually stolen food from my coworker's desk when they weren't there for me to ask. This was a long time ago, but like in a huge office building where there was nowhere to get any food and whatever. And so I've gotten into my coworker's candy dish with huge embarrassment when they weren't there to ask them. And I was just desperate for something, for anything. They paid exorbitant amount of money for food whenever it wasn't available. I've gone long distances in Europe to get food whenever I was in tiny villages. I've cried because I couldn't get food whenever I felt like I had to have it. I've made everyone around me miserable in those circumstances as well. I've eaten boxes of protein bars and Atkins bars in my car at night. I have opened up food in the grocery store because I couldn't wait, and then like eaten the whole box of bars and then been completely embarrassed when I got up to the register to pay for the empty box. The cashier would be like, "Did you know this box is empty?" And I'm like, "Yes, I ate them. I just need to pay for them." That's really humiliating. Of course, I've done over exercising. I have actually wrecked my car while I was eating because I was paying more attention to the eating than I was the driving. Luckily, no one else was involved. It was just me in the car. I have actually broken a front tooth while trying to eat while driving, and I bit the fork because I was trying to eat fast and furious. Yeah, that was really, really traumatic, right? A front tooth. Isn't that fabulous? I've actually bitten my own fingers because I was trying to get the food in my mouth fast enough. And you combine all of those sorts of things. There's more, but that's the crux of it. And it just ruins like your family meals, your family vacations, because all you're doing is obsessing about the food.
And you're not really present with the food and enjoying it and letting it nurture you. You're trying to get it in as quickly as possible. You reminded me of something that I used to do, which I eventually started to see as a sign of pig activity. Remember, I would put something in the microwave. It could be some soup, or way back when it would be like a bowl of spaghetti or something like that. And let's say I would set it for 3 minutes. I couldn't wait for those 3 minutes to pass, and I would cancel the 3 minutes and there would be like 20 seconds left because I had to get it out that quickly. Later on, I came to see that as a sign of pig activity. I believe that I should stay with whatever time frame that I set on the microwave to let it keep running.
I've totally done that. Totally.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. There's pretty much nothing people have done with food that you haven't done with food. I could beat you on some of those, but I'm not going to tell you right now. So you said you've tried just about everything. Did you pick up pieces and parts of the solution along the way, where there were things about the things that you tried that are still helpful to you now?
The only thing that really helps, and I did have to say no flour, no sugar, no rice, stuff like that. I figured those things out for myself, partly because I can't have wheat, but on those other things, partly because I just recognized that I was out of control. Like if I started eating them, I couldn't stop, or I felt like I was out of control. I felt like I couldn't stop. So I had removed those things from my diet for not only the control reasons, but also health reasons. And doing keto kind of helped me say, oh, I can leave this food group alone. But it got so extreme that I started being afraid to eat anything that didn't have a label on it because I didn't know how many carbs it had. I didn't know how much sugar it had. I didn't know how many calories it had. I really was getting to the point where I was eating crap because I just was so wanting that label to tell me what I had taken in. And that was insane.
The thing that really helped me, I heard Brian Tracy say to get the 3 white poisons out of your diet: sugar, flour, and salt. I heard him say that. And whenever I would do that, I would get a little better. I had trouble doing that, except when I was in Overeaters Anonymous, but that made things worse in a lot of other ways. But between what I saw in the food industry and having those words, those 3 white poisons echo in my head, those were probably the most helpful things I discovered. How did you come to us?
I was in OA, Overeaters Anonymous. It never really resonated with me. And I never went to live meetings and all that more than a couple of times. And I do think that it's a well-intended organization. I'm also a coach. I do a lot of positive reinforcement coaching for people and horses and animals. And what I saw with people coming out of that is everybody's so downtrodden and kind of beat down from the process. And so I was coming out of that and just hopeless and desperate, right? I had gained a bunch of weight and I'd filmed a lot for my job. So that was very ruinous to my career because I'm on film all the time. And it just made me lose my self-confidence. And I was looking for an answer and I was Googling eating stuff and your book popped up on Amazon.
And then you read the book. Did it shift your paradigm in some ways? What changed?
I read the first bit on Amazon of the book and I went, no way. I was like, this is far too hokey. No way. Right. And I rocked on. And then a few weeks later, I'm still desperate and it pops up when I'm looking at something. And I'm like, God, what do I have to lose here? Right. So I ordered it. And then I was like, okay. And I know you don't love the word hope, but I'm going to say this. And I hear it from a lot of people on your calls. The book does give you hope that you can do something about it. Right. And so then I was hopeful. So I took 10 days off and I sat with that book every morning for 2 or 3 hours and I read it and I did anything that looked like an exercise that I could pull out of it for that 10 days. That started me down the path of I should sign up for the program. And I was a little dubious about that as well. It took me a couple of weeks to make the decision. It felt like a financial investment for something that I wasn't sure was real because there's so many scams and things on the internet. But
Yeah.
once I got in the program, I was all in.
What was it about the program that made you feel like you were all in and overcame your skepticism?
Because you and all of the other people that were talking lived the same things that I had lived. And I'd never heard, other than an OA, people talking about it, right? But OA really doesn't give you an answer, right? And you're like, here, just make these rules. And for me, that really resonated because I struggled with intuitive eating because I never did good on intuitive eating. And I was like, no, I need guidelines, right? I need some structure. I need some rules. So for me, the fact that there was structure was very, very helpful, but also the fact that you weren't like, you should eat this much wheat and you should eat this much that. I think the flexibility is very helpful from an allergy and health standpoint.
That you could make your own plan.
Mhm.
What was it that happened to you with intuitive eating? Why didn't that work for you?
Because my filter's not working, right? I'm hijacked by all these chemically processed big food products. And so I don't have a filter that's reasonable. It just wants more of the crap. That didn't work.
Gotcha. I hear that a lot. Then you got into the program. Did it work for you immediately?
It did. That helped. I started getting off the bars and cutting back on the Coke Zero and that kind of stuff and started limiting the amount of calories because before the book, I was eating 3,500 to 5,500 calories a day, which is a lot for me. That got me back down to that 1,800, 2,000 calorie range. That was tremendous. So then once I got in your program, I was able to be like, all right, so now I got these rules, right? And so then I got back to reality and stopped eating late at night and started just not grazing all day and actually having some reasonable schedule with my food and things like that.
What it was about the program, the fact that my coaches and myself seemed real, like we'd actually lived this, and so you believe that there was a solution?
Yes, because if you could do it and they could do it and the other people on the cause have done it, then I was like, all right, there's hope. I can do this. And it gave me my power back. The realization that I could choose. And I really believed before I was powerless, that it was out of my control and there was nothing that I could do about it, no matter how hard I tried or what I tried. I suddenly was re-empowered to make my own choices and realize to make my own decisions. And like I tell people all the time with the animals, there's freedom and discipline. And it gave me permission to have some structure and discipline in my life and realize that that was going to work for me.
Got it. Were there specific elements of the program that worked better for you than others? It sounds like you like the Q&A call so you could hear other people's stories.
Honestly, I listen to a podcast or a call every single day for probably the first 3 months. And I still do it for 4 times a week, probably. I think the calls are super helpful, even if you don't ask a question. But the podcast, where I think I really go back to the ones over and over again, are the presentations that you make. Those presentations are things I go back to again and again and again. And probably if I had to pick one thing in the program that was the most powerful game changer with me, there's 2 things really. One of them is the daily emails with Fiona, right? That was huge in the beginning. It still is helpful. And I still write them to myself many days, even though I don't send them to anybody. I still go through the process of writing the email, giving myself the scores, doing the refutations. If I'm struggling, that really helps me. But the other super powerful thing is it mastery?
The step-by-step mastery challenge where we walk you
Yes.
through the process in a written form. Yeah.
I did every single bit of that. And I still go back and use those tools and the additional tools that you guys provide and the bonuses and stuff like that. I still go back and do those on a regular basis. If I need to do a recovery worksheet or the cost benefit worksheet or something like that, to me, those things sit me down and are a reality check and bring me back to my power to choose.
Gotcha.
But the pig is very good at convincing you that you don't have the power to choose, right? And so when you start feeling that and you go back and you pick up those particular exercises, all of a sudden it's like your feet are back on the ground, your head's back on straight, and you can think about what you're doing and make good choices again.
So the essence of your recovery story was the restoration of free will and responsibility.
Yes.
You felt like you were a broken person who had no power to choose what went in your mouth. We're told this in our culture, so it's not a surprise that you felt like that. And through the other personal stories and witnesses and the presentations and the podcasts, you realized that that wasn't true. And you kind of obliterated that myth, and you worked really hard to keep obliterating that myth until it sunk. And you felt like you really were powerful and you were no longer abdicating free will and responsibility.
Yes. And I think the other huge thing is that if we're open to it, and I hear all these people on the calls that do sound very hopeless and very desperate in the way that I felt, and they're not sure that they can do it. If you work the program and work the system and do the things, your sense of self worth is also restored. Mine was anyway. I am worth taking the time to do this. And you continue to bring that up and say, you don't have time not to do it, really, for your health, for your family, for your relationships, for everything. Because when you get so out of control with the food, everything suffers.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate the value that you guys continue to point out, and that each of us has the power, but not only do we have the power, we're worth whatever it takes to make those good choices and find that power back in ourselves to do so.
And as you do find that power and elevate your sense of self-control and being the master of your own fate, that you're not a slave to your impulses, you're the master of your impulses, and you can decide in what direction they are discharged. I think that's the essence of self-esteem. I think self-esteem is the confidence that you can habitually make the right choice in the face of temptation. Because if you can make the right choice in the face of temptation, then your life energy is available to pursue goals that are meaningful and purposeful to you. And that's why people's self-esteem goes up dramatically when we eradicate this sense of helplessness and hopelessness and despair that's so pervasive in our culture when it comes to food addiction and any addiction, really. Melissa, I think you're a shining example of that.
Thank you. That's fascinating. I just want you to know, and I want to thank you and everybody involved. And the people who share their stories are very important. I was living in fear of food, but yet when I started eating, I couldn't stop. And I don't live with that fear anymore, because I know if I mess up, I've got the tools to get back on track. That's priceless. And I'm so grateful.
It's priceless that we have people like you who are willing to share their stories. When you said the presentations were helpful, you're talking about the presentations inside the coaching program. Were there one or two insights that were particularly valuable to you?
I think the cost benefit worksheet was really, really helpful, but it's very similar also to when you do the big why and the big why not. I think that those are two that just stick out in my mind that I continue to go back to. And the recovery one is also very helpful. I don't find that I need to go so many days out with that recovery worksheet, or however many increments or whatever. For me personally, usually once I'm back on track, I'm back on track. But those two, that cost benefit one and the other one that I just mentioned, they are really, really helpful.
When you're saying the cost benefit, you're talking about calculating the financial cost of binging versus not binging, or what are you talking
No,
about?
actually, that one was helpful, but gosh, somehow money wasn't as important to me as quality of life. The negative effect, the horrific effect that my eating habits were having on my relationships and my ability to serve others.
Oh,
Right.
okay. I know what you mean. Yeah.
So when I went through the ones that were like your big why not, the cost and the benefit, those things were so powerful to me. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm here to serve. And if I continue to eat like this and abuse my body and be out of control and kill my confidence and all these things, I can't help other people. And to me, that was the biggest motivator. But I would have never recognized that if I hadn't have done those exercises. And
Gotcha.
I still do them over and over if I need to be remotivated.
That's helpful. I want to take you back to the time when you were feeling suspicious and wondering if this was a scam. And if you could voice the specific objections you had then and kind of the refutation that you came to after working with the program, what would they be? Most people are probably in the state of mind as they're listening to this. I'm not sure if it works for me. Maybe this is all about the money. Just wondering if you could go back to that time and think about your objections and figure out how you overcame them.
Sure. I mean, I totally was like, this is hokey at first when you start thinking about a pig, right? I was like, this can't be real. And then I read through it and I hear your story in the book and I'm like, you really do understand what I'm going through, right? So that was like step one in my conversion. And then also starting to apply what was in the book was probably step two, and seeing some positive benefit from it. And then when I was looking at the program, it's hard for me to be like, well, I'm just going to put my credit card out there to somebody I don't know for $600. I mean, maybe like you said, maybe it is just about the money, and maybe this is just one more diet plan that's not going to work. But through listening to the podcast and listening to the free resources that were on the website, that was really what convinced me. And also just talking through it with my husband and being like, well, if I don't do this, what am I going to do? What are my other options? I mean, I've done everything else that I know of. This is the thing that is laying before me. I'm going to give it a try. What do I have to lose? I mean, if it was my health versus $500 or $600 or even $2,000, I mean, isn't my health more important than that? So that was kind of my thinking and what actually got me to take the leap into joining the program. And I have convinced multiple other people at this point to do it. And so far, everybody's very pleased.
Was your husband supportive at that time when you had that conversation?
He absolutely was. He absolutely was, because he knows what a train wreck. I mean, we've been on so many lovely vacations with me being like, we get off the plane and we have to go to the grocery store now because I have to have the kind of food that I have to eat that's on this particular diet at this moment. You know, he's been with me in the family dinners where I'm crying over my plate because there's nothing there that I can eat and things like that. So he was fully aware of the pain and the lack of self-confidence and not wanting to wear riding pants, which is what I have to wear when I'm filmed all the time and all the things. So he was really supportive. He really was. I mean, he was like, $500, what do you have to lose, right? Do it.
Sure, be cool. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't? Is there anything that you wanted to be sure to tell people, or any specific refutations you want to share? People, like if there was a squeal that was really bothering you and you came up with an answer for it, people feel helped.
I don't know about that, but I have some little things that I do. But I think coming up with your own mantra to break the hold the pig has over you when you're about to do something that you shouldn't, because very often I find it's what I do that leads to the binge trigger, not necessarily the food, right? I could binge on spinach if I'm in the mood to binge and that's what's in front of me. And so one of the things that I have done is come up with some mantras, and some of your mantras I have also found super helpful, you know, like I choose this moment to be healthy and things like that. But one of the things that I've done is come up with things like working more than 8 makes me gain weight. So when I start to hit that 8 hours without the break, then the pig starts squealing and I go to that. Do you know what I mean?
Working more than 8 makes me gain weight. I love that.
Yeah. So just little things, anything that can stop your pig in his tracks.
Terrific. Are there any questions you wanted to ask or any way I can help you?
I don't think so, other than just keep on doing what you're doing and really hearing your voice and Fiona's voice and people in the program when you're sharing your information. That is really important to me. I listen to you talk and I listen to people in the program talk, and it really resonates with me whenever it's a voice of somebody who's not lived it and not feeling it. It's really clear. Right. And so I think it's very powerful that you and the people who have experienced the same things, that we're experiencing the same things that you try to help us with. I can't tell you how powerful it is to really hear you tell your story and really hear you leading people through, or people that have done it.
That's why I can't just hire regular psychologists as coaches. I have to find people who've been to hell and back with food. I find that regular psychologists didn't quite understand.
Here's the thing too, the coaches care. They care. Everybody involved cares. And so if there's ever anybody listening to this who's thinking, I'm not really sure if my coach cares, because I've heard people say that on calls, that's your pig talking, right? That's low self-esteem talking. That's not reality. And that's not true, because every single one of these people that leads these calls and does these emails, these people have been where we are, and it matters to them.
Most people don't totally understand the economics of a business, and they see, well, $500, this guy must be raking it in. But there are actually a tremendous number of costs, and so I can't afford to pay the coaches that much. And so the coaches that work with me are people who are doing it. They would do it for free if I couldn't pay them. These are people who want to further the mission. They know this really works. They suffered just like Melissa, you suffered, and I suffered for decades. They just want to give back. They just want to make it happen. So.
And it comes through in their work. And I understand, I run a similar coaching program. I understand the cost, and I'm shocked that you can do it for the cost that you're doing it for. So
we're trying.
Yeah,
we might have to raise the price at some point, but we're trying. Thank you so much for your time and your energy and your vulnerability and your willingness to tell the story. I'm sure that we'll have a lot of comments on this. I'm sure a lot of people will want to know more about you. So maybe we'll come back and do a follow-up in 6 months or something like that if you're open to it.
I am. And absolutely, if somebody wants to reach out to me through the group and on Facebook, that's totally fine as well.
Okay. Do you want to give your last name or no?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. It's Melissa, spell Spell, Deal, Deal. And I'm happy to chat and do anything I can to help.
Got it. And if people happen to be into, what would you call it, equestrianism?
Mm-hmm. Riding horses.
Riding horses. If people like to ride horses and they want to talk to you, where do they find you?
Oh, yeah. You can find me at Compassionate Horse Click or Victory Land Dressage, 3 words, either way. And I'd be happy to chat with you about that too. There's so much that we can relate to with our animals and their behavior and our behavior that it's really fascinating.
Okay. Very good. Just delightful.
All right. Take care.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.